As I've said in past videos, I normally don't like to either write or talk about animal studies or mouse rat studies, that type of thing, lab animals, because basically these type of animal studies are just preliminary. Much of what's found in animal studies don't necessarily apply to human physiology. However, many of the mechanisms that exist in rats and mice also exist in humans, but still, any animal study always has to be viewed as preliminary evidence for any effect. Any results obtained from animal studies need to be confirmed by human studies. With that in mind, I came across this study that just came out. It's a new study. Before I tell you the name of it, I want to tell you that one of the biggest concerns many people that are a little bit older, let's say baby boomers like myself, and actually this should concern anyone, is the fact that Alzheimer's disease is on the rise. I personally consider Alzheimer's disease the very, very worst way to die, because with heart disease, sometimes you get a fairly rapid death. Cancer could be slow and lingering, but the really bad thing about Alzheimer's is that you completely lose all sense of yourself. You don't know who you are. You don't recognize family. In the latter stages of Alzheimer's disease, all your body functions start to fall apart. Basically, in a nutshell, you kind of convert from being an adult back into an infant, both mentally and physically, without going into detail. Alzheimer's disease isn't curable, unfortunately. The only drugs they have are what they call palliative drugs. Some of these drugs work by altering, most of them work by altering acetylcholinesterase. This is an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a brain neurotransmitter. The certain parts of the brain are particularly affected by Alzheimer's, such as the hippocampus area and other areas of the brain having to do with memory. And the main neurotransmitter in the hippocampus in these particular areas are acetylcholine. So the thought is, by giving drugs that will help to reduce the breakdown of acetylcholine, you could somehow slow down the progression of the disease, or possibly even improve cognition or thinking ability. However, these are just band-aid approaches because they don't really do anything to stop the progression of the disease. All they can do is possibly slow it down a bit. Alzheimer's, right now, Alzheimer's is an inevitably fatal disease. Some famous bodybuilders actually died of Alzheimer's. Most notably, in recent years, Larry Scott, who won the very first Mr. Olympia title. He won it twice, in 1965 and 1966. Larry Scott died from the effects of Alzheimer's disease. There's been several others who I can't really think of at the moment. But the point is that it's a terrible, terrible disease, and anything you could do to prevent it would be very useful. If you check the actual texts put out by the National Institute of Health, or I should say statements, you'll find frequently the statement that there's nothing you can do to prevent Alzheimer's disease. I, however, tend to, based on my own research, I tend to disagree. I do think that there are things that you can do to prevent Alzheimer's. I want to point out at this point that, at this venture, I should say, there are two types of Alzheimer's disease, basically. One of them, the more rare type, affects much younger people. Some people can get severe Alzheimer's disease in their mid to late 40s and early 50s. An example of this was the famous actress Rita Hayworth. This has to do with a genetic defect that causes an increase of a protein called presenilin. And so these people get what they call early onset Alzheimer's disease. However, in the majority of most humans, Alzheimer's disease tends to appear at much later ages, usually in the 70s and 80s. I think, if I remember correctly, I think it's about 50% of people over 85 have some form of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease can also be confused with other diseases. For example, there's something called vascular dementia, which my mother had that, and it also led to her death. Vascular dementia is caused usually by long-standing hypertension or high blood pressure, which causes a gradual destruction of the neurons in the brain. These people look and act exactly like they have Alzheimer's disease, but it's not actually Alzheimer's disease. It's actually caused by a slow destruction of neurons in the brain by long-standing hypertension or high blood pressure. That's vascular dementia. Alzheimer's, however, involves the current theory about Alzheimer's. And there's new theories that pop up all the time. For example, I just saw a report that some certain bacteria in your mouth that cause gum disease can get into your brain, and that they can also cause Alzheimer's disease. These kind of theories come up all the time, but the generally accepted cause of Alzheimer's disease is the buildup of two proteins in the brain. One of them is called beta amyloid, and two particular fractions of beta amyloid are involved in Alzheimer's disease. One of them is called beta amyloid 40, and the other one is called beta amyloid 42. These are produced by they're cleaved off by enzymes from a larger protein in the brain called amyloid producing protein, APP. Now, APP itself is not dangerous. It only becomes dangerous when these enzymes called secretase enzymes, alpha secretase and beta secretase, when they cleave off portions of the APP protein in the smaller proteins, which is beta amyloid 40 and 42. It's the 40 and 42, the buildup of those proteins, what causes neuronal destruction, inflammation of the brain, and subsequently Alzheimer's disease. There's another protein also involved in Alzheimer's disease. It's called tau, T-A-U. That's another story, but that's also involved. They think that the one theory is that the tau proteins build up first, which leads to the production of increased beta amyloid, and it's the combination of the two proteins, beta amyloid and tau, that causes Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is characterized by what they call neurofibrillary tangles and plaques. The neurofibrillary tangles are basically gunk that builds up in the neurons and prevents the transmission of neural impulses. The buildup of these two proteins also causes neural inflammation, which further destroys neurons and leading to the typical symptoms of Alzheimer's, such as severe memory deficits, again, inability to control body functions. That's the late stage. The early stages usually begin with minor memory defects. There's something called minimal cognitive deficit that hits a lot of people over 40, better known as senior moments, where you might forget where you put your keys or something like that. That is not Alzheimer's disease. That's just a normal aging effect. It sometimes, in some people, can eventually progress to Alzheimer's, but it doesn't always. Minimal cognitive deficits can actually be completely treated with exercise and nutrition. You can actually improve your memory so you don't get this. I discuss a lot of the ways to do this in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. In addition, in one of the first issues of my Applied Metabolics newsletter, I included a complete program involving nutrition and exercise that was developed by neuroscientists at UCLA that actually reversed the two stages. See, there's different stages of Alzheimer's, 1, 2, 3, 4. Stages 3 and 4 are very hard to deal with. Stage 4, it's nothing you can do. There's no nutrition, there's no exercise, there's no drug. Stage 4 Alzheimer is fatal. That means, when you enter stage 4, there's so much brain destruction involved that it's inevitably it'll kill you. Leads to inevitable mortality, I meant to say. However, stage 1 and 2, contrary to what a lot of these neurologists say, according to the data which I included in my article, stage 1 and 2 can actually be reversed. In other words, people with early signs of Alzheimer's disease, if they follow a certain nutritional program, involves a lot of antioxidants, because Alzheimer's does have a huge oxidation component. There's excess oxidation occurring in the brain, which also increases inflammation and also increases the destruction of neurons. Controlling oxidation and helping to kind of increase the neurotransmitter synthesis can actually reverse the two stages. That's discussed in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. However, today I've given you an overview of Alzheimer's disease. There's other brain diseases, Parkinson's, there's various kinds of dementia, Lewy body dementia, which is associated with Parkinson's disease. This is what Robin Williams had. He committed suicide because he had this type of dementia. That's beyond the scope of this video. I'm not going to get into it. But I saw this study and it kind of intrigued me because basically what the study involved, it was a mouse study, and it involved providing two natural compounds, often referred to as nutraceuticals. Nutraceutical is a term meaning it's a nutrient that can provide drug-like effects. And unlike drugs, nutraceuticals usually have little or no side effects, which is a huge feature because the drugs that they currently use to treat Alzheimer's can have a lot of side effects. This particular mouse study involved providing two substances. One of them is called epigallocatechin 3 gallate, also known as EGCG. This is a polyphenol compound found in green tea and green tea extract. It's the most potent antioxidant found in green tea, EGCG. The other supplement or the other substance provided in this study was called ferulic acid. And by the way, for those of you who want to know the name of the study, I have it right in my hand. It's called Combined Treatment with the Phenolics, epigallocatechin 3 gallate, and ferulic acid improves cognition and reduces Alzheimer-like pathology in mice. The lead author was Takashi Mori, and it was published in the Journal of Biological Chemistry. It's a pre-publication. It's not actually published yet. It'll be published soon, but I have an advanced copy here. Now, you might be wondering, okay, we know that EGCG, again, the main source of that is green tea extract. I just want to say that the way that the green tea works is that as far as this Alzheimer's goes, the green tea, or EGCG, I should say, that inhibits the alpha secretase, which is one of the two enzymes that cleaves off the APP protein into the amyloid proteins, whereas ferulic acid actually inhibits another secretase enzyme called beta secretase, which also cleaves off the APP protein and produces the smaller beta amyloid proteins that are thought to be the root cause of Alzheimer's. Now, you might be wondering about ferulic acid. If you're a bodybuilder, you've probably already used ferulic acid. It's found in many supplements. It's found in a lot of foods. It's found in a number of vegetable sources. It's particularly high concentration, believe it or not, in popcorn and bamboo shoots. It's a major metabolite of chlorogenic acid. Now, chlorogenic acid is found in coffee. It's one of the beneficial compounds in coffee, and so if you drink coffee, you're also getting ferulic acid via the chlorogenic acid, because chlorogenic acid is converted into ferulic acid. Ferulic acid is also found in carrots, rice, tomatoes, wheat, oats, and navy beans. Navy beans are a particularly good source. Flaxseed is loaded with it, as is wheat bran. It's also found in coffee, as I said, oranges, and peanuts. Usually it exists in the cell wall of plants, ferulic acid. Although there are many sources of ferulic acid in nature, the bioavailability depends on the form in which it's present. The free form has limited solubility in water, and unfortunately that means it has poor bioactivity. The free form doesn't break down. It's very hard to absorb. However, in wheat grain, the ferulic acid, for example, is found bound to cell wall polysaccharides, which are sugars, allowing it to be released and absorbed into the small intestine. So basically, the natural form found in foods is probably the most easily absorbed form of ferulic acid. It also has very potent antioxidant activity. In fact, the 2004 Italian study concluded that ferulic acid is a more powerful antioxidant than vitamin E, beta carotene, and even vitamin C. And this plays a large role in why it might actually help to reverse early signs of Alzheimer's, because there's as I said earlier, there's a huge oxidation component in Alzheimer's. This oxidation causes brain inflammation and just wildfire destruction of neurons. Anyway, by the way, if you ever use sunscreen, like these SPF 15s or whatever, the odds are you've already put ferulic acid on your skin, because the main compound, one of the main primary compounds in sunscreens, is a substance called hydroxycinnamic acid, and which is actually a form of ferulic acid. And ferulic acid is found in a lot of dermatological preparations because it's thought that, because of its powerful antioxidant activity, it's thought to protect the skin from sun damage and also slows down the aging process in the skin. Now, in the mouse study reported in this Journal of Biological Chemistry, again, a combination of ferulic acid and EGCG from green tea was found to reverse the symptoms of Alzheimer's in the mice. Now, I have to tell you, these mice used in the study were called transgenic mice, which means that they were specially bred to produce symptoms of Alzheimer's disease that occur in humans. So these mice were produced, they had brain changes that kind of more or less duplicated what occurs in human beings who have Alzheimer's disease. But it's an important point to note that not all of the effects that occur in human Alzheimer's could be produced in the mice. That's an important point, which what that means in practical terms is some of this might not, unfortunately, be applicable fully to humans. In other words, they worked well in mice, but we have to see if this works in humans. It has to be tested. But what they did in this study is the researchers randomly assigned 32 mice with Alzheimer's disease symptoms to one of 4 groups with an equal number of males and females. For 3 months, the mice consumed a combination of EGCG and ferulic acid. That's the first group. The second group consumed ECG alone. Another group consumed ferulic acid alone. And the last group consumed a placebo. The dose was 30 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, and that's an amount easily consumed by humans. See, a problem with a lot of these mouse and rat studies is the dosages they give are far in excess of what any human would consume. So, when you try and apply the findings to humans, it doesn't work. A good example of that is the compound conjugated linoleic acid, CLA. When you give CLA to rats, it always causes body fat loss, causes a number of beneficial health changes, but yet when you give the same compound to humans, very often you find either no results or even negative results. Why? Because the amount they give to rats in CLA studies is usually 5 to 6 times the dose they give to humans. So the humans are already underdosing when they take CLA. So and this is a problem with a lot of the mouse studies. But in this particular study, the amount of EGCG and ferulic acid they provided was just about what any human would eat without any problem. In other words, they're not huge amounts. I should also add that some people do have a problem with EGCG in the sense that in the liver, because they lack certain enzymes, it's a genetic defect. When they take large amounts of this compound, EGCG, instead of acting as an antioxidant, it acts as an oxidant in the liver, and it can cause liver destruction to the extent where very few, but some people have actually had to have a liver transplant after taking in huge doses of EGCG or green tea supplements. This is a very rare defect, and if you worry about it, you could take EGCG with food. When you take it with food, it seems to protect against the liver effects. But however, when you take it alone, you get a slightly greater increased absorption. Ferulic acid, to my knowledge, the only side effects you get are when you use the topical forms on the skin. Sometimes it can cause a rash. However, the internal forms, the stuff found in food and supplements, as far as I know, it has no side effects. So anyway, prior to and after the 3-month course of the study authors subjected the mice to a battery of neuropsychological tests that are very similar and comparable to similar tests given to humans. Some of these tests involve memory tests, such as running a maze. They do that with the rats and the mice. And they tested prior to the study the transgenic mice that already had the brain defects. They couldn't, for example, get out of the maze because they didn't have the memory to figure out the maze. And whereas the healthy mice, when they put them in the same maze, they were able to get through the maze with no problem. So what happened after 3 months? The mice that had previously shown severe cognitive deficits, after taking this EGCG and ferulic acid, after 3 months, the brain disease mice, let's call them, they performed just as well on the tests as the healthy mice. In other words, taking these 2 supplements actually reversed all the symptoms of early Alzheimer's disease in the mice. Again, EGC works by inhibiting the enzyme alpha secretase, while ferulic acid inhibits another enzyme, beta secretase. I explained how they work. These enzymes cleave the APP protein, which is the precursor for beta amyloid, the small beta amyloid proteins kind of increase in the brain. They build up in the brain, and they're thought to be a primary cause of Alzheimer's disease. If you could prevent the buildup of these beta amyloid proteins and tau, you go a long way to preventing Alzheimer's disease, which is again another reason why I do disagree with these very negative neurologists and researchers who say that there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop or prevent Alzheimer's. I do disagree with that. I do think, however, if you don't take preemptive measures, such as possibly maybe if this pans out in humans, maybe supplementing your diet with EGCG and and eating foods that contain folic acid. And exercise is known to decrease the incidence of Alzheimer's by as much as 50%. You want to avoid certain, for example, highly refined sugars, excessive fat intake, that type of thing. If you do these measures, they've shown that even people that have genetic tendency towards Alzheimer's, and that would be people that have 2 copies of what they call the apolipoprotein E protein. If you have 2 copies of the genes for this protein, your chances of Alzheimer's supposedly are 80% increased. However, just having this particular profile doesn't mean that you're inevitably destined to have Alzheimer's disease. They used to think that years ago, but now with the science of epigenetics, we now know that you can control genes through nutrition and exercise. In those, your genetics are not your inevitable fate, which is really good news, especially when it comes to something like Alzheimer's disease, which again, I consider the most terrible and frightening disease that afflicts human beings today. And again, Alzheimer's disease, unfortunately, is on the rise. There's a couple of therapies they're working on that look good, but I have to tell you that, very sadly, just about 99 out of 100 therapies for Alzheimer's, potential therapies that worked well in mice and rats, actually cured Alzheimer's in these animals, didn't pan out in humans. They didn't work at all in humans. So I don't know, will this stuff work, folic acid and EGCG? Maybe it's worth a try, I say, because they're both fairly harmless compounds. They both have very few, if any, side effects. It's worth a try, I'd say. So I'll leave it at that. In case you're wondering, they do cross the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is a network of blood vessels that prevents substances from entering the brain. It's a brain protective mechanism to prevent toxic substances from getting into the brain. It blocks a lot of things. Luckily, these 2 nutrients can get into the brain, because if they couldn't pass the blood-brain barrier, they'd be absolutely useless. They couldn't do anything. So that's about it. So I again, this is an animal study, and you can't trust it 100%. It's very preliminary. It has to be confirmed by human. I personally, if I had relatives, mother, father, grandparents, or something like that who had Alzheimer's, I would strongly consider taking these supplements while you still can. In other words, as a preventive effect. Again, harmless, not going to cause any side effects. It's worth a try. And if you want further information on a much more complex nutritional program and exercise program to actually reverse the 2 early stages of Alzheimer's, subscribe to my Applied Metabolics newsletter, and you can read the entire program. And you should also subscribe to my Applied Metabolics newsletter, because I cover subjects such as nutrition, exercise science, hormonal therapy, anti-aging research, including preventive effects against Alzheimer's and other brain degenerative diseases, women's health, ergogenic aids, hormonal therapy, and many other topics. It's 40 to 50 pages every month, no advertisements, based on my 58 years of study and empirical experience in the gym. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. Again, no advertisements. I'm not trying to sell you anything but information. It costs each issue. A monthly subscription costs less than the purchase of a newspaper. In fact, it's 6 times less expensive than purchasing a daily newspaper, and it's probably 40, maybe 20% as much as purchasing a cup of coffee at Starbucks. So it's definitely worth it. So subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. When you subscribe, I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where every day I post new information on exercise, nutrition, supplements, and general health. I also answer questions on the Facebook page. I also have a email portal on my Applied Metabolics web page. I will answer questions from current subscribers. I don't answer unsolicited questions. So don't send me unsolicited questions. If you're not a subscriber, I just don't have the time to answer it. My subscribers come first because I appreciate their support. You're welcome to leave comments under this video and any of my videos. You can leave suggestions for future videos. Sometimes I can't guarantee I'll answer all the questions that are asked under the videos. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. So that's about it. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. By the way, walking that dog also actually has preventive effects against Alzheimer's because it's a form of physical activity. Your dog gets you to go out and walk, which is good for anybody. Take care. Thanks for listening.